I'm Mary Fisher, and I am working on the existential therapy and the meaning of life. Now, existential therapy is all about the meaning of life. It's all about why we're here, the choices we make, what choices are going to happen in the future, and it all fits into the game of life. Now, the only reason I use this game as an analogy is because in the game of life, every time you reach a certain spot, you make a decision. You make a choice and that affects the path, and that affects if you end up winning the game of life. And that's kind of how existential therapy is and what it focuses on. It focuses on you and your choices. It takes the victim part out of the equation and it makes you responsible for your own life. You're the person who chooses your own destiny. So here are some key points and some key things to remember with the existential therapy. First thing I'm going to talk to you guys about is the inevitability of death and freedom of choice. Now what that means is with existential therapy, it's important to remember that death is inevitable. Now granted, this may fit in with other therapies as well, but the inevitability of death is something that helps to form your choices and helps you to act the way that you do. So along with that comes the freedom of choice. Now what that basically means is you have the freedom to basically choose whatever path you want. So you as a person become self-involved in the therapy. You're one of the things that contributes to it. And that fits in with responsibility. You have a responsibility as a client that is a little bit different with the existential therapy than you do with some of the other therapies. Now, what that means is you're responsible for making plans about what you're going to do with your life. You're responsible for taking the anxiety out of your life. You're responsible for looking towards the present and the future and not looking back at your past. Now, what a lot of therapists do with existential therapy is when they have clients come to them, they don't go back and they don't look at the past and they don't find the seed of the problem. What they worry more about is fixing the problem in the present and for the future so that when it comes to that, you will know what to do. Next part is understanding meaninglessness. Now, what that means is a lot of people who do this kind of research and who look at the human existence and why am I here and all that, they think about the meaninglessness of the superficial interactions with people, of the getting to know people but not really having authentic interactions. Now, one of the contributors to the theory actually talks a lot about authentic interactions and how being a person who is going to live an existential existence, you need to be having authentic interactions with people. You don't need to go to the superficial. You need to get into the deep personal understanding of others. And that kind of falls with my other key point, which is isolation. Now, a lot of people who believe with the existential therapy that isolation and the feeling of being isolated is something that every human being goes through. Now, with the existential therapy, what it does is it helps you to try to strive for those connections that every person craves when they are just living their everyday life. Now, existential therapy is a little bit different. Like our past couple of theories that we've talked about, with the existential theory, there were about 8 people who kind of contributed to this idea. They all had different parts that were very important. Some of them brought to the table the analysis of oneself in the existential process. We had people who brought to the table, some of them did not believe that a belief in God could contribute to the existential therapy. They thought that it was all about oneself and all about choosing your own values and beliefs, and in doing that it meant not contributing oneself to a religion or to a faith. So this all falls under existentialism. So it's a lot about selfishness in a way, but it's about connecting to others, which takes away from that selfishness. So as a whole, this theory can be used with multicultural approaches, it can be used in group therapy, and it can be used in individual therapy. Some things to know is that it is not recommended to use this therapy if you are dealing with a client who has just gone through a loss, like a death, in dealing with a client going through a life change, and in dealing with a client suffering from serious grief, because this can not help with stuff of the past as much as it does with the present and the future. And so by doing this, what you have to do is, use a different approach maybe for the past.